You're listening to DruidCast episode 211.
A Druid prayer for troubled days. Grant, O God and Goddess, your protection from a world that runs counter to our deepest selves. Protection from the liar and the dictator, from the unfettered power of money. And in protection, strength. Strength of purpose and resolve, strength of shoulder, heart and voice. And in strength, understanding. Understanding of the uses and limits of power. Understanding of the turn of the year, the use of words, the song of the thrush, and the ebb and flow of the rising waters and of the human soul. And in understanding, knowledge. Knowledge of bird, beast, briar and breath. Knowledge of book and bread, barn and burrow, beginning and boundary. And in knowledge, the knowledge of justice. Just reward, just deserts. Justice done and seen to be done. And the justice meted out in quiet corners that keeps hope alive and our planet turning. And in the knowledge of justice, the love of it. For justice means that the needs of all can be met, that the weakest are served and the cruel do not prosper. Justice of a good harvest for a thoughtful farmer, and high praise for a true performer. Justice for those who dare not seek it, and justice for those who run from it. And in the love of it, the love of all existences. Love like family for all of more than humankind. Flower, fungi, feathered and furred. For grass, grasshopper, greenwood, goat and grandfather. And in the love of all existences, the love of God, Goddess, Great Spirit and all goodness. Love for the stumbling pores into which each of us pours our heart's devotions. Love for the guy in the sky with the beard so far beyond what we can picture. Love for our Earth Mother, birthing snowdrop children and catkin offspring as we speak. Love of moon, sun, sea and mountain. Love of ancestors lighting our pasts, and spirits of those as yet unseen lighting the paths to be trod. Love of every kind word over hateful action. Love of every humble act, beautiful painting, beam of sunlight. Love of our tribe. So may it be.
Hello my friends and welcome to DruidCast episode 211. I am your host Dave the Bard, and DruidCast is brought to you on or around the 20th of the month by the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. If you want to find out more about the Order and our courses, you can do that on our website, which is at druidry.org. Every year at the Long Man of Wilmington, we hold an Eisteddfod as part of our Imbolc ceremony, during which bards compete for the Bardic chair of Anderida and a handmade Awen pendant made by my wife Kerry. Every performance in that circle is an offering to the goddess bride, Brigid Brigantia, of many names, who we invoke and invite to join our circle to be witness to the bard's creativity. Every entry this year was, as usual, of an incredibly high standard, but the winner of the Bardic chair this year was the entry you just heard, which was written and performed by Marina Evans, and I placed the background harp of the wonderful Claire Hamilton. As many of you will realise, she took the words of the Druid's Gorseth prayer just that little bit further adding in words and thoughts that I'm sure many of you will have needed to hear. I know we all did in that circle. So listen to it again and again when you need to know that there are others who feel empathy, love and kinship with life. A wonderful opening to the show, so thank you for writing that, Marina, and recording it too, so that I can play it on DruidCast. The Talky bit this month is a recording of another presentation from the Order's winter gathering in Street near Glastonbury. This month's is by Order member Daniel MacKenzie, and his talk was titled Conjuring Demons, Angels and Intelligences, a Druid's Approach to Grimoire Magic. Now, when I saw that title, it got me right away, and I could not wait to hear what Daniel was going to say. Sadly, the recorder missed the opening part of the talk, but nonetheless the rest is deep, informative, entertaining, and holds many surprises. So go on, grab that cuppa and enjoy this month's Talky bit.
The Talky bit.
No, seriously. I love the philosophy of Druidry, how everything connects to nature, how mythos and magic are woven into its tapestry, how it draws strength from a past culture but creates something entirely contemporary and relevant for our lives today. And I make the distinction here, Emma just said in Irish it's the same word, but I make the distinction here because I see magic as a technique, as an art, as a science, and Druidry as a spiritual and philosophical culture that incorporates and enables magic. Now, if any of you have ever studied or participated in more than one magical or mystical tradition, you may have noticed that the first thing you learn in a magical school is a set of symbols. You learn some fundamental guidelines, you learn maybe some new lingo, you even learn a whole new language. Basically, you're learning a cultural background. And many, if not most, immerse themselves deeply into said culture. Simply put, Kabbalists find a taste in kosher cooking. Heathens and Druids try out meat. Suddenly, new festivals are celebrated and even your fashion sense changes, or shall I say, suffers a bit. And even the chaos magicians who believe that all culture is arbitrary create a culture out of this. It's a very human thing. We are culture-creating beings. And the importance of a cultural framework can't be underestimated when it comes to the study and practice of magic. The culture a practitioner is part of informs their language, their ethics, their worldly and spiritual goals, and most importantly, how they see and interact with anything unseen. Now, for me, the thing is that from a very early stage on, I was always fascinated by one particular magical technique, the conjuration of spirits. And not just any spirits, but the one found in the great grimoires of the medieval and Renaissance periods, like Agrippa of Nettelsheim, Trithemius, Paracelsus, and the Solomonic tradition. Now, some here might think, very nice. But what has that style of magic with its lack of nature and trees and Celtic culture to do with Druids? Or even maybe interesting, but what are you doing in a Druid order then? Why don't you join a Hermetic order? Answering the later, I tried several times. But most Hermetic orders are Rosicrucian and therefore Christian-based. And I'm a radical polytheist, to put it mildly, or a violent anti-monotheist, to be more accurate. And I don't have a poker face whatsoever. So sitting in a ritual and rolling my eyes and muttering liar every time when the name of the allegedly one true God is intoned, or making retching noises when I should join my spirit with Christ, doesn't earn me much sympathies in those circles. No, I think I am in the right order. Otherwise, I wouldn't have stayed with you lot for 20 years. My philosophy, my spiritual culture, my view of the world, the universe, the seen and the unseen is distinctively Druidic, animistic and environmental conscious. As I said, Druidry is my culture, a culture that shaped me and that I, in turn, hope to shape a little bit myself. Which brings us back to the question, what the philosophy and the techniques of Agrippa's grimoire or Paracelsus' writings or the Solomonic tradition have to do with Druidry, or how a Druid managed to practice these. It becomes quickly apparent to anyone studying these materials, these tomes, those grimoires, that the grimoire tradition is basically a pagan European spirit science or culture under a very thin veneer of Christianity. And this is not news. Far better scholars than I, like the late Jake Stratton-Kent, Professor Stephen Skinner or David Rankin, have written intensively about how the names of the various spirits described in these books are actually just bastardized names of old pagan gods and goddesses. And to fit them under an overbearing Christian overculture, they needed to be classified as demons or lesser spirits. I'm not condemning this approach, since all magic is a product of its time and place, and in those times, deviating too much from the official church cosmology would have endangered your life. But especially Paracelsus seems to struggle with the Christian paradigm, as many of his spirit contacts and his reports on them are clearly contradicting the monotheistic cosmology. And despite all that Christian overlay, those grimoires are still a treasure trove for us pagan practitioners. And we've always at least drawn inspiration from them. If you haven't memorized it, please take out your Bardic handbook now and go to page number 7. Look at the names for the spirits of the elements: sylphs, salamanders, undines, and gnomes, and their respective kings. Paralda, who, by the way, used to be a queen. Jinn, Nixa, and Gob. All those names, they are Paracelsian. Paracelsus came up with them. They were absorbed in the so-called Western mystery tradition, which is more or less the English mystery tradition, via the Golden Dawn, and in turn found their way into Wicca and then Druidry. Now, what most people excites about grimoires and Goetia are the demonic entities, the spirits of the underworld, or the celestial and planetary intelligences that a magician can bind to their will, and that will do jobs for them and give them power if the magician only uses the right conjuration and the right words and procedures. Get a life. Now, yes, these techniques work. I've been part of enough traditional Solomonic conjurations to testify that. But they also carry a very utilitarian and hierarchical approach to spirit contact, which is anathema to Druidry as I understand it. It's an approach that I believe disconnects us more from spirits than it actually connects us. It's like looking at an ox, and all that you see is a means to, draw your cart, or plow your field, or you're just looking at meat for your soup. You're not looking at a sentient animal, a sentient being with needs that has some unique features and traits and fulfills a very specific ecological function without the need of human interference. And reducing any being, human, animal, or spirit, to only the benefits and wealth it may provide is a clear path to evil. I hope we can all agree on this. Evil begins when you start treating people as things. And then there is the issue of the vilification of many of those entities. As I've already said, many of those demons were gods and goddesses once. They were land spirits, or at least very, very strong elementals. If they are approached just as minor spirits, or even worse, fallen spirits unworthy of any divine favor, whose whole purpose is to serve the will and whims of the magician, they might not be in a very cooperative mood. They might actually be, quite pissed off by being approached in a very hierarchical and downtrodden way. But they don't need to be approached that way. Because when it comes to grimoire magic, there are two main approaches. One is the aforementioned orthodox way, most prominently represented in literature and podcasts by Dr. Stephen Skinner and David Rankin, where you follow the procedure to the letter, literally to the letter, misspellings of Hebrew names and everything. And don't get me wrong, I respect both of those scholars as historians and practitioners, and their books are a treasure. Absolutely. I mean, I'm just too lazy and too busy to research and translate grimoires in depth. But I just don't buy into their claim that if you don't do it exactly their way, you're doing it wrong. Because there's another school of thought, represented by the late Jake Stratton Kent or the German Frater Acker. And they look at these old texts and then adapt them to their circumstances and their culture. And yes, it's a bit like Theseus' ship. How much can you substitute and change until it becomes something completely different and new? But if you really look at it, this is also the story of Druidry. We adapted everything, we changed everything. What we're doing here today and now is unrecognizable probably to anyone from 2,000 years ago. But it still has worth. It still has relevance. So, how we do adapt those grimoire texts? How would that look in practice? One part is that we look at the texts, the magical utterances. And yes, those texts aren't just pretty spiritual poetry. Don't make this mistake. There are magical utterances. A conjuration liturgy speaks a whole world and philosophy into being for the duration of the operation. It introduces the magician to the spirits and states a kind of contract or rules of engagement that both sides will abide by. So the first step into practicing Druidic conjuration is that we look at the underlying power structure within a classical conjuration and check if we can either incorporate or substitute them. And for some pagan practitioners, that simply means that they substitute Jehovah for Hecate. And if you put in the work before, and you're actually devoted to her, to that particular goddess, this may work just fine. But you will find that if you rely on a divine contact, you actually, A, need to be in contact, and B, you need to have the approval of said contact. Lip service won't cut it. And this may quickly lead to what the wonderful Ferdiat McGowan of Temes's Grove in London termed conjuration for Karens. Don't you know who I am? Spirit, obey me because I know your manager. But you don't have to. According to various spiritual teachings, you are divine, or at least you host a divine spark, or with less grandiosity, you're a spirit too, you're just inhabiting a meat suit. you have something fundamentally in common with most entities you want to conjure. So why not cut out the middle god and approach them on common ground? It's like, you're a land being, I'm local here, want to hang out together. Or, I like treasure, you like treasure, show me yours, I show you mine. You like torturing people, I got noisy neighbors. Many schools that teach and practice conjuring will tell you that you need to be in sympathy with the spirit you conjure. That means if you want to contact a fire elemental, you need to have access to your own fiery nature, to your passion, to your courage, to your warmth. And if you want to contact a Venusian spirit, you need to awaken your Venusian aspects, your love, your sensibility. And once you realize that, and I mean here, really realize that on a magical level, that often takes a lot of inner work and meditation and spiritual exercise, more than I can go into detail here. If you really realize that, then you're already halfway there. You are related. You're not conjuring a strange spirit. You're conjuring a neighbor or a distant cousin. No need for a god or goddess to give their blessing. You can introduce yourself as yourself. And you will maybe still need a little bit of a confidence boost and need to introduce yourself. So introduce yourself by stating that you're a bard. You're an initiate of Caradhrin's Cauldron, or simply state that you are a learner and you look for a study partner. Being courteous, honest, and a little bit humble goes a very, very long way here. And if you still need some divine oomph in your conjuration, try Arwen. Seriously, you're all druids here. Arwen evolved in our philosophy and practice from a cauldron's brew into an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together. It's our Tao, our great mystery, our monad, our one, ineffable, beyond being and non-being, unknowable substance, which is both the creative source of the universe and the end of all existing things. Only recently, I reworked a Paracelsian conjuration of the 7 Olympic spirits, planetary intelligences linked to the 7 classical planets, which read at one point, "By the power of God, the one and true, and the light of Christ in my heart, I call for your aid." And my text said, "By the power of divine Arwen and the light of my heart's flame, I call for your aid." And it worked. Very, very well, actually. So, yes, look at your Grimoire texts and then rework them. Look for the poetry within them and write something similarly beautiful. Something that reflects your beliefs, something that is true. Because I found that this is one of the most important factors in any kind of magic. Truth. Your integrity becomes currency in the spirit world. And every word you say must be true. So you can see my predicament. I simply can't use the names of a second-rate desert storm god whose greatest achievement was to convince countless people that he alone created the world as the name of the ineffable. I would be telling a lie, and that would fall on my feet. Now, and after the text, you have to have a look at the tools. And those may differ from grimoire to grimoire, but basically, you'll need a circle. You need a circle inscribed with prayers, preferably in a language and script that your tradition regards as holy. So for Kabbalists, it's usually Hebrew or Greek. And you'll need a vessel for the spirit to inhabit, something that the spirit can appear in. And you need a symbol of the spirit, their seal, or at least a written representation of their name, their calling card, if you will. Now, if you look at most grimoires of Solomonic magic, you find very elaborate circles with numerous layers and symbols and usually some psalms inscribed all around. It takes considerable amount of time to inscribe the circle like that. So many practitioners, and they've always done it, by the way. I've just heard that they sort of unearthed a sort of carpet with a Conjuring circle on it. You inscribe your circle on a piece of cloth, so you can reduce them, and it takes less time to do the whole setup. And from the Orthodox perspective, your circle is mostly there to protect you if you're dealing with demons. You're setting a barrier, you're getting inside your shark cage. And of course, there are schools who teach you that all you need is a simple circle scratched on the ground, or none at all. And there, from my practice, I noticed something very, very interesting. When I started doing my first experiments without any kind of circle, or with just an imagined circle, how we usually do it, I found something very interesting. It didn't work. Or at least it didn't work unless I was calling something local and was in that actual place. And then the spirit contact that I made in previous work told me that the circle is necessary to make me visible to them, not the other way around. It's like standing in a spotlight. You have to be illuminated in order for the spirits to find you. And the same contact, which appeared as a golden serpent to me, suggested that I make my circle an Ouroboros, the snake that bites its tail. And I inscribe the snake with a prayer I believe in. And when I've finished, the spirit will come and ensoul that circle, making it an entity in its own. And that is completely in line with animistic views that your tools, your dagger, your chalice, your drum, etc., they aren't just tools. They are vessels for spirit to inhabit. So I ended up with a golden snake biting its tail, painted on a large piece of cloth that has the Druid's prayer written in Ogham down its spine. And by the way, I believe that Ogham is hugely underappreciated when it comes to magic. It's to us Druid what Hebrew is to Kabbalists. I would actually argue that everything you can do with Hebrew in magic, you can do with Ogham. And I strongly suggest to whoever is interested in this kind of work, look at the work that Uri Leach is doing in his Ogham Grove and build on this. He, for instance, came up with what he's calling the Ogham Rose, which is basically just a circle with all the Ogham letters, and that is perfect for drawing sigils on. Now, we need the receiving vessel, the thing that the spirit can appear in, and there I have to admit I'm sticking with the classics. Dark mirrors are great, I love them, but a dark bowl full of water works just as well for me. And if you're dealing with land spirits, skulls will do nicely. And I mean any kind of skull. If you have a cat that brings home dead rodents, that's fine. Just pop them on an ant's nest, put a flower pot over it. After a week or two, you're good to go. And yes, size doesn't matter. You don't need to rob a graveyard. The skull doesn't need to be human in order to speak to you. I've been working with a badger skull and a dog skull I found in the woods for 5 years now, and I can't complain. And if you're unable to obtain a skull in nature, store-bought is fine. I believe now you all have enough pointers so that you're able to adapt grimoire conjurations for your own use. Use the Ogham instead of Greek and Hebrew. Use herbs and woods that are sympathetic to your cause instead of metals. And most importantly, use your common sense and use your integrity. If you need more, I have about 200 copies, maybe more, of an invocation liturgy I came up with, and I'm happy to give them out. And there's a video on YouTube on how to use this text. Just search for Daniel MacKenzie and occulture and you'll find it. And I didn't include all this information here because I hate to repeat myself, and you lot deserved a fresh lecture. And I want to close here with a question that didn't get answered in the talk at the occulture. Why should you do conjurations? And there are many reasons. And first and foremost, it's actually fun. You can make contact with spiritual entities in a much more intimate, and at least for me, clearer and more focused way. I have ADHD, but when I actually make contact in a conjuration, all of a sudden I have a laser-like focus on that particular presence. It can't be ignored, and there's no way I get distracted during that meeting. It is an experience unlike any other. And I mean unlike any other. You can make spirit contact in vision. That's easy. But yeah, depending on your skill, suddenly your mind wanders. That doesn't happen in conjuration, at least not for me. And make no mistake, you will know when your experiment is successful. Whether you're doing it outside or indoors, the whole atmosphere changes palpably. It is the proverbial, the birds stopped singing when you're doing it outside. You won't necessarily have a full apparition, but you have an unmistakable sense that someone is there. But of course, if you have different techniques for spirit contacts, by all means use them. If all you need is some incense and a drum, great. I'm unable to trance to drums. I enjoy drums, but no trance. Another and more important reason for this work is that you become an active part of a wider spiritual ecology, and that you make friends that can help you. And with any kind of social interactions, don't only make friends so they can help you. That's not nice. You're stepping into a far greater environment. For those who did the revised version of the Bardic course after 2004, you may remember the Eisteddfod pieces by John Misterly, where he relates his conversations with various elemental spirits from the Franz Barden tradition of conjuration and evocation. Misterly doesn't go around utilizing these entities. Instead, he asks them what they dream of. He engages with them on so many levels. He makes friends. And if you approach elementals and land spirits with an honest desire to learn, they can show you so much about the place you live in. If you call upon stellar and planetary intelligences, they can teach you a lot about the universe and about yourself, if you let them. And then there are the forgotten dead, the actual ghosts, if you want, who don't want to go, Not every ghost you encounter needs to be shoved off into the great beyond. No, they don't. They want to stay because they feel the need that they have to guard a place or have to guard a family or a tribe. And they are actually quite glad that someone takes the time and chats with them. It's rather lonely for them. So, if you do this work, imagine yourself being a nature documentarist. You're being a spirit documentarist, if you want. And be just, engaging as they are. And of course, yes, some beings are just destructive and should be approached with care, and only if you really, really know what you are doing. But so is a tiger or a great white shark. They are not evil. You are just tasty. So be as enthusiastic about spirit ecology and making contact with an elemental or a daimon or genius loci as Stephen Irwin would have been when he encountered a hitherto unknown snake. Oh, crikey, that's a big one. And if they start to like you, they will stick around and help you. They will alert you about changes in the physical environment as well as in the spiritual. If you do jobs for them, they will leave gifts at your doorstep, literally. It happened to me that I woke up one morning with the idea, there is a dead deer in the ditch nearby poisoning the water. Get it out. And at first I ignored it, and then it came again, get it out. And I got out, it was a weekend, and I actually found a deer. And that particular water source was a water source for many other wildlife around. So by leaving the deer in there, the water would have gotten poisoned. And I got the deer out, just out of the water, and then let nature do the rest. And I returned to my personal garden and sat there, and all of a sudden, a really, really large heron feather came down, something I always wanted. Beautiful, blue-gray, and exactly what I needed for another work. So, it was a bit of exchange there. And there are many stories like this. So, yes, engage. Please don't be afraid to approach this technique. Become a Druid conjurer. Make some invisible friends, and most important, be a friend to them. The world is sure to get bigger and much more enchanted through this. Thank you.
To Moulder, we may not tell you, said Vessel to foes. We're off to the woods, said John the Red-Nosed. We're off to the woods, said John the Red-Nosed. And what will you do there, said Miller to Moulder. We may not tell you, said Vessel to foes. We'll hunt the cutty wren, said John the Red-Nosed. We'll hunt the cutty wren, said John the Red-Nosed. Shoot her, said Miller to Moulder. We may not tell you, said Vessel to foes. With bows and with arrows, said John the Red-Nosed. With bows and with arrows, said John the Red-Nosed. to moulder. What we'll do then, said Vessel to foes. With guns and with cannon, said John the Red-Nosed. With guns and with cannon, said John the Red-Nosed. Said Miller to moulder. We may not tell you, said Vessel to foes. In pots and in pans, said John the Red-Nosed. In pots and in pans, said John the Red-Nosed. Oh, that will not do, said Miller to moulder. What we'll do then, said Vessel to foes. A bloody great brass cauldron, said John the Red-Nosed. A bloody great brass cauldron, said John the Red-Nosed. Said Miller to moulder. We may not tell you, said Vessel to foes. We'll give it all to the noble, said John the Red-Nosed. We'll give it all to the noble, said John the Red-Nosed. Oh, that will not do, said Miller to moulder. What we'll do then, said Vessel to foes. We'll give it all to the poor, said John the Red-Nosed. We'll give it all to the poor, said John the Red-Nosed. I absolutely loved Daniel's talk, and I hope you did too. And following the talk, you heard a traditional folk song of winter taken from Tales from the Crowman, my album of traditional folk songs called The Cutty Wren. Well, this music means we are approaching the end of the show, but before I go, let's have the results of last month's competition. The prize was a copy of Mara Starling's latest book, Welsh Fairies, a guide to the lore, legends, denizens and deities of the other world. And the question I asked was, during the talk, Mara told of the meaning of the word Druid. What does the word Druid mean? Well, the answer I was looking for was Oak Wise, and the first name drawn from the hat and winner of that fabulous book is Erin Clements from Llanelli. Congratulations, Erin. That book will be with you very soon. The prize this month is the Almanac, a seasonal guide to 2025. And I know we're already a little way through the year, but there is still plenty left. And it's a lovely little book that contains tides, star lore, recipes, and so much more folklore and information about the months of 2025. You will love it. And the question I'd like you to answer is, the festival of Imbolc is mostly associated with one particular goddess of smiths, healing and poets. What is that goddess's name? The festival of Imbolc is mostly associated with one particular goddess of smiths, healing and poets. What is that goddess's name? And I know that there are a lot of ways to spell and say her name, so I'll accept any of them. Email your answer along with your full postal address to podcast@druidry.org, and one of you will win that fabulous little book. So, my friends, that is a show. I will see you again next month for DruidCast episode 212. But until then, I wish you all peace and blessed be. Goodbye.